we're first going to hear from Manuela Schon, who's going to talk about her work. So I'll introduce Manuela. She's a sociologist. She's a well-known member of the radfem blogger collective Die Störenfriedas, active in the fight against the sex industry, currently working on an international anthology about the problem of prostitution, which includes an interview with Sheila Jeffries and will be published in March.
I'm from the radical feminist writing blogger collective Die Störenfriedas, and we've been founded in 2014 because as a reaction of all the fights we were having in the political left about prostitution. That was the origin of this blogging page, because there was a growing movement against prostitution in Germany, and we got so much pushback from the political left and our male colleagues, so that one of the founders of Die Störenfriedas, Mira Siege, she was already writing on another blog, which was called Die Freiheitsliebe, together with some male leftists. And she had published an article about pornography. And the next day she found herself being attacked in another blog article on her own blog, like not challenged on her ideas, but really personally attacked for her writing. Without knowing that this was even published on her own blog. And so, of course, we were very furious about that. And that was the reason that we thought we need our own media. Like, if this is happening on media channels that we are taking part of, this is nothing that we can accept. And so we started this blogging collective. And that was at a time when there was actually no real radical feminist movement in Germany. We had a lot of liberal feminists. We had, of course, still like the magazine Emma, which was, of course, on the radical feminist side, but like as a movement, there was not much going on, and nothing like organized going on. And there was just a few of us in social media. Like, I can remember when we first had the discussions about prostitution, then there was like 2 handful of women all around Germany that met each other there in the commentary sections. And that's how we found each other as abolitionists, anti-prostitution activists. And then out of this movement against prostitution, we found that when we started the blog, that there's a lot of other issues, of course, to talk about as radical feminists. And then this developed like somewhat parallel, like an anti-prostitution movement and the radical feminist movement growing. First of all, we were centered on porn and prostitution, but we had also other topics, but we were very hesitant to talk about issues of gender identity, because we were already so much attacked for our stance on prostitution as homophobic, and like it was already really hard to get to be heard there, racist, that there was all these accusations that all of you know very well. And so we thought, if we make up a new field, that would probably harm our fight against prostitution. As you know, Germany is the brothel of Europe when it comes to prostitution. So it was a strategical thing to ask ourselves if we should even write about this topic. But then again, the topic was pushed upon us. We couldn't avoid it because it got so much tension and so much was going on. So we thought about making another blog about just gender identity issues and transgender and stuff, because also another reason was that we could already see that so many women were targeted for speaking out, and that some of us, of course, were also afraid what this could mean to our livelihood and our existence, like financial existence. So it took a while to take a stand there, but then at some point we just couldn't avoid it. And we said, okay, we will write one text now where we explain everything and we make clear our stance. It was called Why the Construct of Gender is Toxic, and was like trying to explain all the things. And of course, the first thing that happens was, okay, they are not only homophobic, they are also transphobic. But actually, of course, those people that don't want to talk to us and those people that don't want to align themselves with us, they didn't. But on the other hand, we found that a lot of women agreed with us, and more women agreed with us, and more young women agreed with us. So that was like in the debate in prostitution, there was also a nice realization that there is some ground to be won there, and then that this is the right way to go. In 2016, we published a book, which I show you here. It's a very, it has many pages. And I think that was also an important thing to have this book, because we could see there was a real interest in all these topics. I think there's only 2 texts about gender identity in this book, but still it was a beginning. And today we can see that in many regions of Germany, there is radfem groups coming up. And this is so great to see. Like, first, it was just a few of us speaking out publicly with the term radical feminism. And now there are so many local groups coming up, and we can see the movement growing. The last thing we did was that we started a podcast in 2020. There's 2 episodes up now. And we also talked about transgender and gender identity on that. And it feels more and more, even though we know what repressive tendency there is against women speaking out, we can see that it's more and more getting easier to talk out about these issues. Like, there has been some attempts to silence us, but there is more positive outcome so far. We hope this stays this way. One thing I want to talk about was that in 2018, I was invited to a discussion of the German left-green newspaper Die Taz. And they wanted to make, like, they wanted to show different positions, and they wanted to make a talk about radical feminism versus liberal feminism. And I was very hesitant to take part in that because, of course, I was a bit scared. But then I said, okay, let me see. I had to go to Berlin, and I was like, yeah, maybe. And then I said, it's a good chance, so let's do this. And then one day before, because I didn't know who I was going to talk with, who would be the other person discussing there. And one day before this was going to happen, and the flight had already been booked and everything, they told me I was talking to a man identifying as a woman, and that it's a singer, rapper, and who had written a book. I said, okay, this is going to be really scary. Like, I hope I'm not destroying my reputation with that now, because I didn't know what was going on. And then I came there, and the first question was, and it was all about transgender. It was nothing about the different ideas or the different ways of looking at things. It was all about this issue, because that was the only thing this other person had to talk about, had anything to say about. And I always tried to bring in other topics, but it was like, the first question was, yeah, why do you think, why are you why is that the right feminism for you? And what are your main ideas? And then I will, and why do you not support the other feminism? And so I started, and I made an introduction on my position. And then the other person was asked and said, well, I actually have no idea what the different feminisms are. So right from the beginning, it was clear there is no basis, no fundament for a discussion, because if someone doesn't even know what we're talking about and doesn't know about the history of all that, how can you discuss that? So it was always referring on own feelings, on own things, experiences, and it was really hard to do this discussion. And I mean, it was a nice person. I have to say that it was a very nice person. I could see the vulnerability and everything. So I was thinking about, like, if I had another woman in front of me saying these things, I would have been so hard on her. I would have said, why are you even here sitting discussing with me? And I could realize that I was holding myself back very much out of fear that I would get labeled transphobic and heartless or whatever. But luckily, a lot of people heard this podcast and it didn't harm myself. I didn't harm myself with what I said. It was like, I was expecting something else to happen, but actually the responses were quite good and nobody used it ever against me, because I didn't say anything that was like proving their point that we are hateful or something. So I was always trying to find like a common ground, or saying like, yeah, my position is that, and I can see your point, but maybe this could be a way around this. Like, this doesn't harm us, but it helps you. And like talking about a third toilet or something, but not giving up the women's toilet. Like, that was my strategy on that, saying, I'm not against you, but my position is to protect women's rights. Yeah, that was a very interesting experience. Yeah, then what else? In last year, there was also something that happened, that when I was at an event in the neighbor city, it was about something else. It was about white feminism. Like, we are the white racist feminists. It was women of color, say, from the liberal feminist crowd, and she was saying like, we are all no real feminists and we are also racist. And I wrote a report on this event, and then half a year later, there was a reply from the organizers of this event to my article, saying like that I'm racist, of course, and that I'm a transphobic person because we published this in that articles. And then in the introduction on Facebook, they wrote where I work. And so that was also really scary. It was really like putting up a threat on, we know where you work, and we know, like asking people to intervene at my employer. Luckily, nothing like that happened. And they got a real big shitstorm that was not even initiated by us. Like, I wrote one comment under that article, and then I could see a lot of other women coming in without me having asked them to help me. So they absolutely had not much support. I think there were 3 against all the other women, and it was really interesting. So what we can see to end is that a lot of women have written to us that they are very glad that we take a different position. And I want to end with one quote of an article that I had found on the internet, and I found that brought so much tears to my eyes, because it showed me it makes sense what we are doing. And I read it out, and it says, it was a former sex worker and non-binary woman writing this. And she wrote, for some, the whole thing will seem like a very sudden, unexpected 100-degree change. For me, it was a very long, critical confrontation with myself when I noticed that my behavior was anything but healthy and is of no help to me or anyone else. This was a development that for the most part took place quietly inside myself within the last year. A period of time reading and thinking about these prohibited writings that finally led me to the conclusion: the radical feminists whom I had portrayed to be my enemies never were enemies, and they were right all along. Thank you so much for listening.